self-examination inquiry, formative experience analysis, often only sought after critical of anyone's life.
This goes on for like 35 minutes for people to read papers. Now, I think it's kind of fun up to a point. So we really threw them off. So yes, I've done these things before, and it's been pretty wild that I've spoken on to 1,000+ people in one shot, and whatever 45 people, intimate settings.
Number 11.
We go 11.
Does the Institute offer internships, and what would the ideal candidate look like?
Yeah, so Al-Sinani Institute, what I love about the Institute is that it really focuses on story within the framework of Al-Sinani, how your story, your career and your life story intersect. So internships. So we do have an internship program at Al-Sinani, and it's run through the HR department. So if anybody is interested in that kind of conversation, they could absolutely contact our HR department. And because Al-Sinani has really, departments that other organizations don't have, we have a department that focuses on music and how music and festivals can help bring our brand voice to different audiences. So that's really cool something. So that's in the marketing department, but to have somebody just dedicated to music, I think is pretty cool. So yes, we have those types of internships. We also have a sponsorship and events. We have a guy named Rick Simone, who's the Senior Vice President of Events and Sponsorships. And Rick is wonderfully gifted in how to pull off these events, pretty massive events. In fact, he told me when he was at the Super Bowl, he was just watching how they were organizing. He's such a systems guy. He was looking at how many people were going through what performers were what part of the performance and what tunnel they went through. It's wild. He was more interested in that process of setting up the performance than the performance itself. So if you have a passion related to any of those areas, you might find it's not just a jewelry company. Okay, it's a lifestyle company.
Number 12. What do you wish you had known when you were an undergrad?
Nobody ever talked to me about making money. It was really weird, and tying that with a passion. So what I think, I talked to my son who's 16 this morning about this when I was taking him to his carpool, because he goes to Bishop Hendricken, and so a bunch of people from my town, because I live about 15 minutes away from here, they drive. We each take turns to drive from school, and I told him the same thing this morning. I said, no one ever shook me up and said, hey, you really like conveying concepts or sharing what you learned. You should be a teacher. I stumbled across teaching and ended up teaching at a military academy, but then I went to business, and then I went back to teaching. So I think what no one ever does or did for me, that I think whenever I get the chance to speak to anybody in their 20s or even in their 40s going through what we call a career transition moment, right? I say just you've got to find what makes you tick. If you wouldn't do something for money, find out what you wouldn't do for money that gets you charged up, that actually gives you almost like a shot of caffeine, right? An injection of boost, if you will. And how many times can you track that excitement during the day? That's like a green light. Things that you don't like to do, try to track those. Those are like orange lights or yellow lights that you can rush through. Like, I can't wait for it to be over. And yellow or red lights are the things that you just despise. You're still gonna have to do red light things in life, right? So I think if you find like more greens, right, in an area, you should probably think about like, what can I do in that space? Like when you lose time doing something, that's cool. Like when you forget what time it is. Like musicians are good at this. Musicians will forget what time it is. Like, oh, we're too much practicing for like 3 hours. I didn't even know. It's like because they were in love with like playing music, right? And so what you lose time doing should be something that you consider connecting to work, because you're going to have to work probably for 50 years, like half a century, holy mackerel, So you might as well be doing what you love.
Number 8. What is one of the biggest challenges you have been facing in your current position?
The intersection of business, psychology, and meaning making at work, when you have to make money working, is interesting. Because even in an organization like Al-Sinani, we have to focus on the fact that our classes have to be structured in a way that doesn't take away from the workday. So, like, for instance, I'll have a class that's 9 to 12, 4 days. So it's called positive core communications. Basically, how to be able to present and be positive and manage your attitude and your frame of reference and your perspective, and also to understand languaging and the word choice and whatnot. That class is like a 12-hour class. It's 3 hours, 4 consecutive days, usually Tuesday through Friday, once a month. Sometimes, in the development of the institute, some managers were like, oh, I don't know if we can afford to lose somebody, right, for those morning hours. But in reality, if you had somebody in a seat who had some stinking thinking, who was like sort of a negative Nelly, or wrote an email that was sort of not positive, the second and third order effects of that negative email or that funny face that they made at somebody creates gossip, creates additional emails, adds BCCs and CCs and forwards, and it creates all this extra wasted time. So one of the challenges I had early on was, and I didn't have to sell it, like that class is good, but there's always that healthy tension between pulling somebody out to learn and then and getting the job done. So I think that and so when you design classes in a corporation, you have to always be like connected to the real world. So anything that was theoretical had to be landed in like, okay, you do it, Brad. I want you to recreate that negative situation where you had anxiety. So as long as I was doing that, the obstacle became something I could jump over.
Number 10. If you had to name 2 pieces of advice for a person looking for self-discovery and engagement in the workplace, what would they be?
2 pieces of advice for self-discovery and engagement. Okay, so here's one thing that we don't get encouraged to do: speak up. So it's very hard. So I define leadership as the capacity to think critically and the courage to voice it with ease, grace, and honor while you're serving other people. Complex definitions, a 3-parter. But so you can think critically and say, oh, I understand things, I'm a leader. But if you don't have the courage to voice it with ease and grace, maybe you'll voice it, but you're disruptive. Then you're not really leading. But courage is something that's missed often. And I'm not saying go out there and be disruptive. I'm just saying have the courage and also the sensibility to speak your voice with some ease and grace and some honor. That might mean that you have to think about how you're presenting a response to someone, like saying, with all due respect, I really love the fact that we're really focused on a deadline, but I'd like to share something with you. And the person might say, well, what is that? You say, are you sure I can share it? And I say, yes. I think that we're losing our creativity because the timeline doesn't give us any shot at meeting the group, and the work product is not going to be good. So I think that courage is really important. I see that all the time, that there's this operational tempo of hurry up, get it done, and there's no time for people to commune, to actually figure out the stuff that will actually be criticized later. So having courage is key. So, and what happens when you self-discover, when you have courage and you voice it, you actually meet yourself for the first time, in many cases. Because when you don't have courage, you're actually not being your true self. So it's just like you're a host. So I think that, having, again, but with ease and grace and honor, that's my always that requirement. Because then people can digest your courage. Otherwise, I think you're
I know you already touched on this briefly, but number 7.
What do you plan on addressing at the kickoff event?
I touched it a little bit, but I really believe that you're in control of your story for the most part. That there are some events that will erupt in your path that you won't be able to control, but your response to those and your ability to accept them is critical. But I believe that if you are actually becoming educated and understanding how to, and you want to be in sports or in events management, right, or whether it's music-based or not, you have to walk that path and stay true to that course. And that means in many cases getting lessons and additional learning to happen to really help you have a reference point, because you have no frame of reference. This conference, I think, is great because you can listen to stories of other people who you've